Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and to today's tutorial we're going to be taking a look at the steps and techniques into this very small dog nose study here. So if that's something that you're struggling with your pet portraits or in your wildlife work or anything, then make sure that you carry on watching. Okay, so the first basic thing that I've done here is created my outline, and I have a video where I show you exactly the technique that I use to do that. I'm going to leave that linked in the description below. So before you begin, make sure that you've got an accurate outline. Dog noses tend to be like this kind of weird mushroomy shape, so as long as you've got like this kind of fluted area at the top, and then it kind of narrows down as you come towards the bottom, and then you've got like these dark chasms in the middle, you're pretty much good to go. So as you can see, I'm kind of outlining my basic outline here. I'm just using a burnt umber pencil. I've just gone around the graphite ever so lightly, just using a light pressure and just getting that shape in, and I'm using a light pressure so that if I make a mistake I can easily erase it and I can redefine the shape if I need to or anything like that. I've also gone in and shaded the nostrils, so the darkest areas, and I'm just making sure that I map out some of the darker areas and marks within the nose itself. So I'm making sure that I get all of those kind of nuances in, any kind of shaded areas that I need to here. I will just mention that this reference photo is from Pixabay. I'm going to leave a link in the description as well if you want to draw along with this. But after I've gone in with the burnt umber, I'm just going over those darker areas, especially in the nostrils, with some dark indigo, and I'm also using some dark sepia as well to really darken those areas up. Once I've got those pretty dark, I'm then going in with a full layer over the entire nose with some warm grey 1, and then I'm following that with some light flesh. And I'm making sure that I layer these two colours together to try and create a kind of really light taupey, kind of nice light brown colour, almost like a nougat colour in the polychromos if you're familiar with that, but like super light. So I'm just layering the warm grey 1 and the light flesh, and then I'm getting a little bit darker in some areas with some sanguine just underneath the nostrils, where there's a little bit more of a darker shadow where the nose kind of curves down and into the bottom area. I'm just making sure that I map out those darker areas there, going around the nostrils and doing the same as well. And I'm also adding in a little bit of warm grey 2 to start to darken up some of these areas on the nose. So I'm using a combination of warm grey 1, light flesh and warm grey 2 to create some darker areas. And then once I'm happy with those darker areas kind of almost being defined, I'm then going in with a really light layer of burnt umber through the middle of the nose and around the edges to darken it up and create that really light nougat colour. Of course you could just go in and use a nougat pencil, but I wanted to get a little bit creative here and layer a few colours together to create my own tone. So if you're wanting to create a kind of nougat tone, layer those three together. It's a perfect combination to get really nice nougat. You can also blend with the white or some more warm grey 1 over the top to get it even lighter as well. So as you can see on the nose, I've kind of got some base tones going on. I'm starting to add in all of the shadows, and you can kind of see the areas where I have left the base layer of the warm grey 1 to get these highlights on the nose. So on the very top of my nose here were some very harsh highlights, and then there were a few sort of more blended in ones as you come down towards the bottom of the nose. And I'm making sure that I leave those with the base layer, that warm grey 1, and I'm going around with some dark indigo, some walnut brown, some dark sepia, and really darkening up some of the dark areas. On this particular reference photo, on the left hand side the nose was a lot darker, really had these really dark areas. Then through the middle of the nose it was quite light, and then off towards the right hand side it was kind of dark but not as dark as the left hand side. So really made sure that I focused in those really dark areas, the kind of almost black areas of the nose. Really made sure that I put down some walnut brown and some dark indigo, put some burnt umber in there, and just made it as dark as possible. I'm going to go back in and blend that area as well, but for the time being I'm just kind of adding all those colours in to get a place marker down. So I chose this reference photo because it had both elements of brown and black in the nose, which is perfect because you often come across those in wildlife and pet portraiture, so I thought this was the perfect reference to use. And for those brown tones, as I said, I've created that kind of nougat-y tone with the light flesh and the burnt umber and the warm grey 1, and I'm also going in with the sanguine and some burnt umber and some walnut brown to create some even darker areas in that middle section. So I've added in some sanguine around the nostrils and darkened it with some Caput Mortuum violet as well, so I'm bringing in a few more of those violet-y tones, and I'm creating this weird texture that you see on dog noses. It's kind of like circles, but it's just kind of like a weird pattern of lines that kind of look like little circles but kind of don't at the same time, if you kind of getting what I mean there. So I'm just kind of mimicking that texture by adding in some lines of some walnut brown, just making sure they're really light to begin with, just to see how the texture looks, and then going in with a bit of a harder pressure and making sure the pencil's really nice and sharp to get those details in. And I'm just doing this on the left hand side of the nose to begin with, and I'm making sure that I leave that highlight free as well. So coming back to the left hand side of the nose, I'm just making sure that I go through and darken. I'm adding in some lighter blue tones that's going to help to blend a little bit of those darker tones that I've already got going down. And then I'm just going in with some of those darker tones as well, so some walnut brown, some dark sepia and dark indigo, again increasing those blue tones to try and help it look extra dark, and just making sure that I use quite light layers. And then as I'm getting up towards the kind of final layers where I can't really go any darker, I'm just making sure that I increase the pressure, blending all of that out. I'm using a little bit of a white pencil, I'm using the Holbein Soft White, and I'm also using some of the warm grey one as well to help do a little bit of blending. I'm also going back in and using that light ultramarine as well, and I'm adding some of that light ultramarine to the highlight, because as you can see I've kind of started to distinguish the highlight by bringing in some of those little lines and those detail elements on the nose. I've used some of the dark indigo along the top along with dark sepia, and then as I've come through to the middle of the nose where it's a little bit more brown, I've switched back to using the walnut brown pencil. It just helps to create a little bit more of a softer detail rather than going in with a harsher colour like a dark sepia. It's going to make it stand out a little bit too much. So where you do have lighter areas, you do want to make sure that you use a lighter, bit of an oxymoron here, but a lighter, darker pencil. So something not as dark as like a dark sepia, something like a Caput Mortuum or a burnt sienna or something to go in to those lighter areas and add a little bit of a lighter texture to the nose. For the left hand side, I've just continued to make sure that I blend and shadow everything, so I'm really making sure that I concentrate a lot of the darker colours around the nostrils, and then make sure that I lift the pressure off the pencil and use less layers as I come towards the lighter areas, just so we get that kind of look that the nostrils are curving in. And the key there is just to make sure you concentrate some of the darker colours around the actual nostrils, and then make sure that you lift the colour like you would if you were drawing fur. You'd lift the pencil in some lighter areas, just doing the same with the nose, and making sure to keep those highlights extra white by going in with a layer of blue, because using blue in white areas really makes them really super white. It makes them look a lot lighter than what they are. So for this particular tutorial, I'm not going to touch too much on, well, I'm not going to talk about the fur at all, but if you want to learn how to do the fur like I have with this and look at the nose in a lot more detail, then make sure you check out my Patreon page on my website. It's the actual perfect time to sign up right now because it's the beginning of the month. And this month I'm really excited about, because I have a little bit of a series of tutorials that connect with each other that's going to enable you to use a little bit of creativity, use your like creative juices a lot more, and create something really special. So I'm not going to reveal too much what that is, but obviously I will as it unfolds, and I bring tutorials or the short tutorials to you guys here on YouTube. But if you want to learn how to follow along with this particular dog nose, or any other aspect of like wildlife and fur and everything, then make sure you check out those two channels. As I said, it's perfect time to sign up right now. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope that this has helped you. I hope that this has given you a few little tips on how you can create your noses, looking at what areas to work on first and what kind of colour combinations you can use depending on the colour of your nose. So I've given you a few colour combos for brown noses, as I've got here, and a little bit of a colour combo for some darker noses as well, and things to look out for like keeping the highlight areas and adding in those darker areas first as well. It's really important to map out your darker areas to make sure that you can get the values and everything correct as you go forward and start to build in your texture and leave your highlights and all of that kind of stuff. But I will see you guys in the next tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!